bought land, where it's being transferred. And this is real-time data that removes many other things, including manual manipulation, as well as the many issues we've had with the land fraud in the country. And so a very good job well done there for Murang'a County. It is being championed as one of the front runners in terms of digitizing revenue collection and sealing loopholes using digital means. And we also had a presentation by one of our platinum partners or platinum sponsors, and that was the Jospong group of companies. An interesting presentation there on waste management solutions. And this is a conversation that is timely for Kenya, considering that with the devolved function, this is now a function that county governments are taking up, and at Jospong they are bringing a lot of innovation into championing waste management solutions. And they say there's really nothing like waste, right? It's just misplaced or misprioritized resources. And that was an interesting take there from Jospong group of companies saying that they can create jobs for Kenyan youth through waste management solutions as well. They are one of our platinum sponsors and have a stand at the exhibition right by the pavilion. You can pass by there and take a look at what they do. Now, on the legislative front, big wins were celebrated and mentioned on the first day of the 9th Devolution Conference, and these include the County Public Finance Law Amendment Bill of 2023, which is now law and has been championed as one that will move counties forward, especially in terms of public finance law. The County Allocation and Revenue Bill of 2025 was also another legislative milestone in the world of devolution, one that will guarantee county assembly independence. And it is one that President William Ruto also mentioned in detail in his speech yesterday. We also had progress on the County Assembly Pension Bill, which promises retirement security for legislators. Another point there mentioned by President William Ruto in his opening speech of the 9th Devolution Conference, making a promise to county workers, really, that they will be able to receive pensions just like legislators on the national level. And that was a big win there for Kenyans and for those working in the county governments. Now, aside from that, we had 11 side events taking place yesterday in different tents, and a lot was happening. And of course, what goes on in those side tents will also go into that final joint communique that we'll all have on Friday on how to push devolution forward. And we'll have a few more side events today as well. But developing a sessional paper on devolution and public sector management is one thing that came out of the side events, the need to develop a sessional paper on devolution and public sector management. We also had a recommendation that devolution is an equalizer, but only when driven by evidence and citizen priorities. This also bringing us back to the theme of this year's devolution conference, devolution for the people, for prosperity, putting inclusion, equity, and social justice at the forefront. And of course, then that ensures that citizen priorities are put at the forefront. Now, in the world of healthcare, and we had about 3 side events dealing with healthcare yesterday, several small wins were celebrated, especially with regard to the use of technology in advancing healthcare in the country. We had GIS talking about drones, blockchain technology, both for monitoring, for enforcement, as well as transparency, especially in providing healthcare in the grassroots level. And so those were 11 side events taking place yesterday. We'll have a few more side events taking place today, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be announcing them shortly here in the main hall. After the main event closes, we'll have the Digital Health Authority in the main hall, and they'll have a session on closing the gap and the role of digitization in healthcare and promoting social equity. In Tent 1, much later on, we'll have a session by the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, and that is in Tent 1, on digitalization of county government services to enhance efficiency, productivity, as well as sustainable growth, a conversation many counties are now interested in. Intent 2, much later today, we'll have the World Resources Institute. They will have a side event on end-to-end climate resilient planning in Kenya. And Intent 3, we'll have a session on affordable housing convened by the Affordable Housing Board. We'll also have one on by the Refugee Consortium of Kenya, and that is on strengthening intergovernmental partnerships for inclusive development for refugees and host communities. We'll also have one Intent 5, that is by Pelham Kenya, and it will be on accelerating agroecology adoption through devolution, advancing inclusive prosperity, as well as people-centered development. We also have one Intent 6, much later on, by the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, one on strengthening disability inclusion in county governments by turning policy commitments into practical actions. And in Intent 7, we will have one side event on powering universal health coverage through community health partnerships in Kenya. We'll also have a side event by the National Syndemic Diseases Control Council that will be Intent 8 on accelerating county-led solutions for ending the triple threat of new HIV infections, mistimed pregnancies, and sexual and gender-based violence among adolescents. A timely conversation there. And Intent 9, we'll have the Public Service Commission convening a session on re-engineering human capital for efficient and effective service delivery in collaboration with the county governments. I believe we have many people who will be attending these. Intent 10, the Ministry of Health will have a session on unlocking the future of innovative strategies for nutrition, financing, and strategic planning. Intent 11 will have a session by the Lake Region Economic Bloc in investing in the future, promoting nurturing care for early childhood development in the Lake Region Economic Bloc. And finally, in Intent 12, we have the UN Habitats session on knowledge, data, digitalization, and capacity development, largely for training for municipal boards in Kenya on people-centered smart cities. For quite a lot, ladies and gentlemen, going on much later in the program, and we'll be getting to that. But let's begin with the theme of today. So day one was on good governance, and today we place a spotlight on human rights and social justice. The sub-theme here is leading at the forefront, subnational governments as protectors of human rights and social justice. This is really about making rights real for people at the devolved system, ensuring that both social, economic, political, civil, and even cultural rights are not just words in the Constitution, but a reality for Kenyans on the ground. And to help us set the tone for this second day of the Devolution Conference, we are honored to have our keynote speaker, Honorable Judith Pareno. She is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Justice, Human Rights, and Constitutional Affairs in the Office of the Attorney General, with a remarkable career spanning over 29 years. Ms. Pareno previously held the demanding role of the chairperson of the Odhiambo Election Board for 12 years. Her career highlights also include serving as nominated senator, where she was a member of the Speaker's Panel, National Security, Cohesion, Equal Opportunities, and the Committee on Delegated Legislation. Ms. Pareno has also further contributed to regional governance as a member of the East African Legislative Assembly, sitting on the House Commission, the Legal and Agriculture, Tourism, and Natural Resources Committees. Do we have Honorable Judith Pareno in the main hall? All right, ladies and gentlemen, she is in the hall. Please help me in welcoming Honorable Judith Pareno, our keynote speaker. A round of applause, please. All right, let's give her some time. Let's have Tabi and the Gospel Ministers Band play some music as our keynote speaker prepares her way to the stage. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. That is our keynote speaker, Honorable Judith Pareno. Karibu sana.
Honorable Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries, Governors, Senators, Members of Parliament and the Diplomatic Corps, Development Partners, CSOs, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my honor to address you on this second day of the Devolution Conference 2025, convened under the theme Human Rights and Social Justice. Today's plenary, leading from the front, subnational governments as protectors of human rights and social justice, asked us to envision how county governments can uphold rights, promote justice, and deepen participation at every level. When I was told to talk about rights, I first remembered when I was first nominated as a member of Parliament for East Africa Legislative Assembly. At that time, the new constitution had just been passed. And the category under which I was picked was labeled marginalized. That was in 2012. And I kept asking myself, why have I been given a title, marginalized? Who is this who marginalized me over a period of time? Which institutions or systems created a marginalized lot against the rest of the citizens of the Republic? And I went up to look at the definition of marginalized and looked at the dictionary. And it is said that social marginalization occurs when a person or groups of people are less able to do things or access basic services or opportunities. And it's further said that today's being marginalized doesn't just mean being excluded. It refers to systematic ways individuals, communities are treated as less important, less powerful, or less worthy socially, economically, or politically. So I ask you a question today, 63 years down the line since independence, do we still have the marginalized? 15 years of devolution after the new constitution, do we still have people in society, in this society, in our country, called marginalized? Those who can't access water, those who can't access hospitals, lack of food, shelter, education, roads, 15 years after our devolution had begun. So that is my question to you today, ladies and gentlemen. From the onset, let us remember that human rights form the bedrock of our constitutional order. Every Kenyan is entitled to dignity, equality, and the freedoms guaranteed by our supreme law. Equally, good governance is not a separate stream, but the vessel through which rights are realized. Transparent processes, accountable institutions, and citizens' participations are the cornerstone that transform rights on paper into tangible outcomes in people's lives. At its core, Social justice is the fair distribution of opportunities, resources, and privileges in society. In its most ordinary form, it means that every mwananchi, regardless of gender, disability, background, or location, from the scenic lands of Gwasi Hills in Homa Bay to the narrow alleyways of Lamu Old Town, has access to water, quality health care, decent education, and a means to earn a livelihood. To protect these rights is to ensure that no one falls through the cracks of our systems, and that our laws, policies, and budgets proactively uplift the most marginalized amongst us. Kenya's minority and marginalized communities have long endured historical discrimination marked by political, social, and economic exclusion. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 and Article 260 recognizes these groups, whether defined by population, size, traditional lifestyles, in nomadism, or geographical isolation, and affirms that their rights to full participation in national life. Yet the reality is that many still face high poverty rates, geographical remoteness, and limited access to education, healthcare, and infrastructure. In pastoralist and nomadic areas, inconsistent schooling and lack of formal employment opportunities perpetuate cycles of exclusion, while insecure land tenure, forced evictions, and poorly consulted development projects undermine livelihoods and cultural survival. Protecting minority rights means going beyond legal recognition to ensure fair representation, equitable service delivery, and targeted resource allocation. County governments must embed inclusion into their integrated development plans, guarantee representation in decision-making, and tailor communication and outreach to reach all communities. When we protect the rights of the minorities and marginalized groups, we are not creating division, we are building a stronger, more united Kenya, where every community has a voice and a stake in our shared future. We must also confront the layered nature of exclusion. Women and girls in these communities face compounded barriers to education, healthcare, leadership, and I wonder what happened to the two-third gender rule. Up to today, we've not been able to realize. Often made worse by harmful practices and gender-based violence. Regional disparities remain stuck in northern Kenya, Kajiado, Narok, Coast, Turkana, parts of western Kenya, where poor infrastructure and weak public services hinder equality. Access to justice is often out of reach due to cost, distance, or discrimination, while affirmative action programs too often fail to reach those most in need. Addressing these challenges demand more than good intentions. It requires bold, well-resourced, community-driven action. We must strengthen land rights protection, enforce genuine consultation in all development initiatives, and ensure that our social protection reach the most remote, disadvantaged. Above all, we must listen to these communities. Listening means integrating their lived realities into our budgets, policies, and priorities. Only then can we make devolution a living promise of justice, dignity, and shared prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, since devolution, county governments have been at the forefront of delivering essential services such as health, water, sanitation, roads, and agriculture. These functions, when executed with transparency and accountability, translate directly into human rights on the ground. A newly constructed dispensary in a remote ward is more than brick and mortar. It is a right to health. A new maternity ward becomes the right to save childbirth. A clean water point is both a service and a right. But service delivery alone is not enough. We must embed human rights at the heart of our county integrated development plans. This call for bold action, conducting vulnerability analysis that uncover hidden inequalities, engaging marginalized voices in setting priorities, and designing monitoring frameworks that track not just progress, but fairness. No community should be unseen. No voice should be unheard. At the foundation of this vision is good governance, where budgets are inclusive, participation is genuine, and oversight is fearless. Only then can we truly deliver for all. Ladies and gentlemen, a culture of constitutionalism thrives on an informed majority. While my department holds a vital mandate to conduct continuous civic education on Constitution, this mission transcends any single institution. It is a shared calling for government, both national and subnational, civil society, and every Kenyan working together to nurture a nation grounded in justice. By empowering citizens with knowledge of their rights, we cultivate populace that can demand accountability and participate meaningfully in public affairs. We must integrate this outreach within public participation channels and embrace digitization as a catalyst for inclusion. By leveraging technology, we can bridge geographical, social, and economic divides, ensuring that all citizens, regardless of location, ability, or status, have access to information, services, and opportunities. Digitization enhances transparency, strengthens citizen participation in governance, and creates platforms for innovative service delivery, ultimately fostering an inclusive society where no one is left behind. Let us embrace platforms such as e-learning modules on constitutional rights and virtual public forums that bridge distances. Leveraging ICT and digitalization is central to the Honorable Attorney General's strategic vision for a modern, accessible, and responsive state law office. Ongoing efforts to digitize key services, including the Office of the Public Trustee and the Registrar of Marriages, are paving the way for greater efficiency and service delivery. Ladies and gentlemen, I initially asked why we are not yet there. Why do we still have people who do not have water, cannot access legal aid, cannot access roads? And I want to say that corruption is killing the dreams of this country. In response to His Excellency the President's directive to intensify the fight against corruption, our office has consolidated key statutes into the Anti-Corruption Laws Amendment Bill 2025. In this bill, we are amending the Evidence Act, amending the Criminal Procedure Code, we are amending the Money Laundering and Economics Crime Act, amending the Witness Protection Agency Act, the Anti-Bribery Act, the Public Officers and Ethics Act, and the Leadership and Integrity Act. This bill is designed to break down procedural bottlenecks, expedite the resolution of corruption cases. We actually are reducing the time frame for corruption cases to a maximum of 6 months for each court to be able to conclude, and reinforce the legal tools and protection necessary to hold offenders to account. Alongside it, we have also developed a Whistleblowers Bill, Protection Bill 2025, which establishes a secure, confidential reporting mechanism, recognizing that those who speak out against corruption are the frontline defenders of public integrity. These bills are now undergoing public participation in our counties. We have already done 13 counties. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be doing another 14 counties. And we expect to have covered half of the counties of the Republic of Kenya to hear your views on how we are going to fight corruption by use of these bills. Another bill is the Public Participation Bill 2025, in turn seeks to enshrine meaningful citizen engagement in governance by establishing clear standards, processes, obligations for both national and county government. This bill is a crucial step towards deepening democracy, enhancing transparency, and ensuring that development truly reflects the voices of the people. In line with this conference theme, it underscores that prosperity can only be achieved when governance is people-centered, participatory, and responsive to the dreams and priorities of the people themselves. We also have another bill, the Victim Protection Act, which is undergoing amendment and remains a cornerstone in safeguarding the rights and dignity of all persons affected by crime. Anchored in the government's manifesto commitment to uphold human rights and promote access to justice for all, the Act proposed amendments which are aimed at providing a clear framework for protection, support, and participation of victims in the justice process. The vision has been further reinforced by Executive Order No. 1 of 2025, which prioritizes the strengthening of victim services as part of a broader national agenda to ensure justice delivery is both people-centered and responsive to the needs of the most vulnerable. In this regard, the operationalization of our national victim protection services through ongoing legislative reforms, as I have mentioned, could not have come at a more opportune time. The recent directive by His Excellency the President mandates a committee led by Professor Makau Mutua, alongside our office, the Office of the Attorney General, to develop a comprehensive framework for compensation of victims of riots and aligns squarely, this directive aligns squarely with our mission and amendments of the Victim Protection Act. All the above-mentioned bills signal our unwavering resolve to build a transparent, accountable governance framework, one that empowers counties, rebuild public trust, and ensure that devolution truly delivers for the people. I call upon all of us to engage robustly when these bills come for public hearings. We expect to hear you on your views on these bills. Your lived experiences and insights will ensure these laws are fit for purposes and reflect the realities on the ground. And these bills are available on the Attorney General's website. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya's obligation to United Nations and regional human rights treaty bodies rely on comprehensive national reports. Yet all too often, the wealth of county-level achievements and innovations goes undocumented. While we appreciate our long-standing partnership with the Council of Governors, there is need to strengthen regular county national reporting protocols by tapping into progress on health outreach, water and sanitation schemes, inclusive education initiatives, and more. Our national submissions will reflect the true breadth of devolved successes, informing the international community and, more importantly, providing every Kenyan with evidence of how devolution is transforming lives. Finally, my department of the Department of Justice and Human Rights is reviewing the National Policy and Action Plan on Human Rights, Sessional Paper No. 3 of 2014, to address issues such as digital rights and climate justice. As for frontline implementers of devolution, counties have unique insights, from climate resilience agriculture to the digitization of public services that must inform this process. I invite you to engage actively, share your experiences, and help us craft human rights framework that is not only national grounded, but locally driven and future ready. As I conclude, central to all this is what I would borrow Baba's words when he addressed us at the national retreat. And he asked, are you carrying along the people? Are they hearing you? Are you listening to them? Carrying the mwananchi along is the lifeblood of devolution. It means taking governance out of boardrooms and bringing it to the marketplaces, the wards, the villages. When the voices of Kenyans shape decisions, devolution stops being an idea on paper and becomes the living promise of justice, dignity, and shared prosperity. Transparency and dialogue build trust, and trust fuels collaboration between government and citizens. As we embark on today's deliberations, let us recommit to ensure the voices of ordinary Kenyans are not only heard, but shape the policies, budgets, priorities. This is how we make devolution real, deepen social justice, and translate our constitutional promise into shared prosperity for all. And now, as we transition to our plenary discussion, I invite all of you to engage with vigor and insight, drawing from the remarkable expertise present in this room. May the day's deliberation be both enriching and transformative. Fueling the bold, people-driven solution, we need to carry this vision forward. And remember, no room to leave anybody behind. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Judith Pareno, for setting such a powerful tone for the conversations and discussions that will be had today, largely on the theme of human rights and social justice. I see a lot more people have joined us in the main hall. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Na karibuni sana. I don't know if it was the Homa Bay nightlife or the snooze button, but we are glad you're here. We'd like to ask those at the back to please come to the front. There's a lot more seats. We are celebrating devolution, after all. It's about being closer to services. So there's a lot more seats. Please come to the front and be part of this conversation. Now, we are here to have a conversation on how county governments can lead at the forefront as being protectors of human rights and social justice. We're just about to get into that panel discussion. But before we get into that, let's just recharge our brains and our minds for a moment as those coming in get a moment to sit down and settle down. Our DJ is ready with a very, very short music interlude. DJ, take it away. Let's all settle down, ladies and gentlemen. If you're coming in, please grab a seat as we introduce our panel and moderators for this morning. All right, we are all settled down. If you're still standing, please take a seat as we begin this second plenum of this 9th Devolution Conference. Now, the conversation, like I mentioned, is exploring how county governments can lead at the forefront in advancing human rights and social justice at the ground level. And to move into this panel discussion and to guide us through this rich conversation, we have Ms. Jacqueline Mbogo. She is the Chief of Party for the UKAID REINVENT program. Ms. Mbogo is a dynamic visionary executive leader with over 2 decades of experience driving transformational change across the peace and security landscape, international development, as well as gender equality sectors in Africa. Currently serving as the Chief of Party for the UKAID Peace and Security Program, as well as serving as a G7 Advisory Council, she brings a deep expertise in designing and leading complex multi-stakeholder initiatives that advance inclusive governance, peace building, and women's leadership. She will be the moderator for this second session, ladies and gentlemen. And as she comes on stage, please, a round of applause for moderator, Ms. Jaki Mbogo. Asante sana. As she takes her seat, let's also join and introduce her distinguished panelists that will be joining her today. And we have the Honorable Governor James Orengo, the Governor of Siaya County. Mr. James Orengo is previously served as an elected member of Parliament for 6 terms, with a stint in the National Assembly as well as the Senate. In 2007, Mr. Orengo was appointed as the Minister of Lands in the national government. He is also an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a senior counsel who has participated in many celebrated cases, including being the lead counsel in the presidential election petition that invalidated the presidential elections held in the year 2017. Honorable James Orengo, please join us on stage. We also have Honorable Millie Grace Odhiambo. I'd like to introduce her as Bad Girl Millie, but she has quite a profile, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Millie Odhiambo is a seasoned human rights lawyer and advocate of the High Court of Kenya with over 30 years of experience specializing in children's and women's rights. She is the longest-serving woman member of parliament, currently in her 4th term and serving as the minority chief whip in parliament. She has held key roles in the Pan-African Parliament, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, and even the Parliamentarians for Global Action. Before politics, she worked with FIDA, ICJ Kenya, and the Attorney General's Office, and is also the founding director of the Cradle and the Maiden Institute. She has received numerous awards and consulted widely with UN agencies, NGOs, and governments. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Honorable Millie Odhiambo. We also have with us today Honorable Senator Danson Mungatana, the Senator for Tana River County. He is a PhD candidate in leadership and management. He has a Master's of Laws in International Trade and Development, a postgraduate diploma in law. He is also an alumnus of the Alliance High School. In the Senate, he serves as the head of delegation to the Pan-African Parliament. He also chairs the Shakahola Ad Hoc Committee, the Legislative Summit Planning Committee, and the Senate Sports Club, among others. So we can say he is responsible for the win that the Senate had in football against the governors the other day. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Honorable Senator Danson Mungatana. Also on the panel this morning is Honorable Rehema Jaldesa. She is the chairperson of the National Gender and Equality Commission, a strong voice in inclusion, protection, and protection of vulnerable groups. Honorable Jaldesa was appointed in December 2024. She was previously a woman representative for Isiolo County between 2017 and 2022, and has held leadership roles at the Kenya Industrial Estates, Ewasonyiro North Development Authority, as well as the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife, and Heritage. She has championed key legislative reforms, including amendments to the Health Act and pastoralist-focused bills. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Honorable Rehema Jaldesa. We also have with us Mr. Hussein Khalid. He is the CEO of Vocal Africa, a passionate civic leader promoting transparency, participation, and the citizen's voice. Khalid is the executive director of Vocal Africa for over 20 years, in fact. He has championed for human rights, social justice, agitating for the freedom and liberties of communities at the grassroots level and freedoms across Kenya and Africa as well. Hussein has worked largely with the national, continental, and international initiatives, including the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Haki Africa, Muslims for Human Rights, Clarion, as well as KHRC. He holds a law degree and additional certifications from the Rhodes University, the University of Nottingham, as well as USIU. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Hussein Khalid. And last but not least, we have Ms. Ruth Bolo Okun. She is the chairperson of the Young Women's Leaders Connect, a champion for youth empowerment, gender inclusion, and grassroots advocacy. She is the co-founder of the Sisterhood Project Kenya, as well as the chairperson, like I mentioned, of that Young Women Leaders Connect. She brings with her 8 years of experience in democratic governance, political dialogue, as well as elections observation, policy development, and inclusive leadership. She has worked extensively with MCAs across Kenya in developing strategic programs. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Ruth Bolo Okun. All right, let me now hand it over to the moderator of the day, Jacqueline, take it away.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Karibuni sana to this great day, day 2 of Devolution Conference, where today we are going to move from paper to practice. We are moving from the written to the practice. And we will be focusing on Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which ambitions great things on human rights, the Bill of Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, 15 years after we passed the Constitution, we'll be processing the extent to which our counties can become the center of practice of ensuring that Kenyans can get rights. And ladies and gentlemen, I know we are missing one more of our panelists, and I believe, Michelle, that's what you want to announce. Yes.
My bad. And so, ladies and gentlemen, also on the panel this morning is Counsel Duncan Okello. He's an Associate Director of the Kenya Judiciary Academy. Mr. Okello is a political scientist, a lawyer, and an international relations specialist. He recently concluded his tenure as a commissioner at the Kenya Law Reform and currently serves as Associate Director at the Kenya Judiciary Academy. Mr. Duncan Okello. A round of applause for him, please.
Karibu sana, Bwana Duncan Okello. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have with me a very distinguished panel of experts, practitioners, and people that have walked the talk of constitutionalism in Kenya. I want to start with you, Honorable our governor, and I would like to ask you to reflect back. You have been at the forefront of pushing for human rights. You have also been associated with the second liberation of our country. I want you to reflect on particularly the Bill of Rights and tell us, do you think as a country we have made steps forward or are we making steps back? Karibu sana.
Thank you very much. It's a big panel. I'm honored to be with the colleagues I see here, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. One, I think it is a great achievement that Kenya had a constitution like the one we have, which is part of Chapter 4 of the Constitution. And if you look at Article 19 of the Constitution, it talks about the centrality of the Bill of Rights. It states that the Bill of Rights is an integral part of the Kenya's democratic state. Now, without taking too much time, if you look at the main human rights concerns and which rights are there in the Constitution, even if you look at the order in which they're spelled out in the Constitution, the right to life, the right to dignity, the right to the security of the person, the right to privacy, the right to the freedom of expression, and the right of assembly and administration. If I just take that lot of rights and examine what has happened to those rights in the last 10 years or so, I think we can generally say we are not there yet. We are constantly experiencing a situation where the state is constantly invading into these rights, and without the vigilance of the people, it is so easy in the Kenyan situation to make one step ahead and 2 steps back. But my comfort is that our constitution has stayed intact. If you are aware, during the constitution-making process, before it went to the people, it was taken to Parliament for consideration. Parliament considered nearly 100 amendments to the Constitution, and ever since, there have been attempts to amend the Constitution. I think it is part of our achievement that this Constitution has remained intact, and particularly the Bill of Rights. It is important that all of us realize the centrality of the human rights. It pervades our life, and it is found from the very beginning clauses of the Constitution right up to the last clauses of the Constitution, so that we can build monuments, we can build roads, but without respecting human rights, we cannot build the kind of society which is spelled out in Article 3 of the Constitution, that we are a democratic, multi-party state. And I want to end up by giving this example. If you go to a place like Russia, somebody like Joseph Stalin built a lot of monuments, which you can see up to now. If you go to South Africa, you can point monuments that the evil regime of apartheid left behind. But because of their human rights record, that record is still a permanent feature of the leadership of Stalin and the leadership of the racist regime in South Africa. And the main concern for us as a country now, and looking at what I saw in the front pages of papers today, we must always be careful that building a nation is not a brick and mortar kind of exercise. What is important and what is spelled out in our preamble, what is spelled out in Article 10 of the Constitution about principles and values of good governance, is that there are some core values that must become an integral part of our democratic state. And central to it is human rights. Thank you.
Asante sana. Indeed, central to the foundation of a nation is human rights. I want to turn to you, Millie, Honorable Millie Odhiambo. You have been known to be a fighter for human rights, especially for the vulnerable person. You are now sitting in Parliament, and we've just heard the protector of the Constitution primarily is the Parliament. Now, I want you to reflect on what the governor has said, and particularly looking at the whole issue of Chapter 43, socio-economic rights. And tell us, what do you think? Do you think Parliament can play a role to ensure that our counties deliver on this right? Because these are the tangible rights that Kenyans are asking for.
Good morning, and maybe I can start off by saying that since I come from the lakeside, I heard you introducing Senator Mungatana by saying he's a PhD student. So I must also say that I'm a PhD student on governance and leadership. But do I say? But having said that, I just want to say that what Honorable Orengo has spoken to largely is issues of civil and political rights. And you're asking me to talk about social and economic rights. And I want to say that I was born and raised in this town. When I was born and raised, it was a small and dusty town. I grew up not too far from here, where my younger years, on a street that has now been named William Ruto Street. And I was born after independence, and our parents spoke about how colonialists took away our rights and our dignity. And on the street that I grew up in, there were street lights, but then there were other amenities that were missing. But there was promise that was ripe for change, especially because the colonialists had gone away. But with the time, instead of us seeing positive move, we were actually regressing. And I'm a writer. So I started writing a novel called The Things We Lost with Freedom, because I thought we had got freedom and lost with freedom. And it's a paradox, because then we were fighting so hard to remove the colonialists and ended up losing in the process. And I was looking at it in contradiction with countries where the colonialists stayed longer, like South Africa and Zimbabwe. And you could see that they had progressed in certain things because of that. And I think it's an uncomfortable truth that a lot of us as Africans leaders don't want to deal with. That when we have been given our freedom, instead of using our freedom for progress, we use our freedom for regress. But I want to say that, fortunately, I have been forced to halt writing my book. And it is a tragedy, because I've had to halt it only because of the last probably a few years in Homa Bay, 3-4 years in Homa Bay. And the reason I halted it is because the reason I was writing this book is that I'd hoped to see the hospital bigger, better, offering better services. But it was worse than the hospital where I was born and raised in. It had gotten worse. I'd hoped the roads were tarmacked. The roads were not tarmacked. They were getting worse. Everything that we saw, we had running water in the house. There was no more running water in the house. So I was like, so why did we want freedom anyway? But that's why I'm saying it's changing in the last few years. And you can credit that to a deliberate effort by the national government towards inclusion of this area that has been marginalized for years because of being in opposition, and which is a tragedy, that we don't look at issues of inclusion and governance. You know, civil and political rights really marry a lot with social and economic rights. Because if you are not in government, then you are not served. So I would actually want to challenge our government to ensure that it doesn't matter whether people are in opposition or not, include every part of the country in development. And that is why a lot of my friends, I'm here with my friends who I told them I want you to come and experience Homa Bay. In the crowd here I have my friend who is from Nyandarua. And she was telling me, how come many places you hear people saying 1 term, and here people are just jumping saying 2 term. And I told her, if you go around here, you are seeing the roads. All these roads in reality are new. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be that development is there, and I make my decision independent of that road based on other governance facets. So what am I saying in summary? I'm saying that with the devolution, again, we are seeing now things changing. The governor for Homa Bay told us yesterday that the county government is already doing an emergency wing unit for Homa Bay Hospital. So that's a positive change. There are many dispensaries that are coming up in the county. That's a positive change with the devolution. So our challenge, especially as governors, is we have opportunity with the devolution for purposes of social and economic rights to change the trajectory of our own counties, to bring healthcare, to bring water, ensure there's access to water, healthcare, and services. But then, of course, again, Honorable Orengo will tell you justice delayed is justice denied. Most of us think of it in terms of civil and political rights. But in this case, the justice delayed would be how quickly do governors get money from the national. How quickly does the money come? And for the first time, I'm happy that, and you'll confirm to us, that the CS Treasury has said that for the first time, the money has come, all the money has come in time. Because again, even if you say that you are allocating money to governors and it comes, late, then it affects planning and the delivery of service. Otherwise, what I can say as a country, that we kind of had a seesaw, but in civil and in social and economic rights, our greatest hope is with the counties working effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Millie, I want to push a little on that, and maybe to encourage you to finish your book as a PhD student, but I also want to push a little bit on that. You talked about, we were colonized, we were left with something, we lost it. The second liberation was the Constitution. So how do we go about making sure we don't lose momentum? Because what you're speaking to is actually lost momentum. We seem to gain it, then we lose it. So how do we ensure we do not lose momentum? And how do we sustain that which you're speaking to now? You're saying things are changing. We can see in Homa Bay, you're telling us the hospital you're born in is much, much better now. But how do we make sure we don't lose it?
I think for me, it's about holding the leaders accountable. And there are different arms, and that's why I'm glad that we have civil society as well, but also the National Assembly as well, and the Senate as well. And the senators would really help us by ensuring that we hold our counties accountable. And the National Assembly would help us by ensuring we hold the executive accountable. And the civil society would help us by holding the members of parliament accountable. So it's about vigilance and accountability. And if we don't sustain that vigilance and accountability, then we would regress. And one of the things that I love about the Constitution, as Honorable Orengo has indicated, can you imagine even the recent challenges we had as a country if we did not have the Constitution? It would be a tragedy that you find somebody shoots, like the guy with the mask who was shot. And if we didn't have a constitution, what would be his recourse? Yeah, of course, we hope that cases of these extrajudicial killings would stop. But because you have a constitution, you can see that now there is even a talk about compensation, which I really welcome. And maybe just to also inform you that I'm the one who came up with the Victim Protection Act, and I'm glad that we are amending it to provide a stronger framework for compensation. But we need to not have. I'd be happy if the law I passed is ineffective because we are effective as a government, so that nobody needs to be compensated. That's my dream, that nobody needs to be compensated. But unfortunately, because you have rogue people, like the guy who shot the mask, and the tragedy is he's a very young guy. He's himself a very young guy, and he shot this guy. And now they've, it's a loss which we don't. One life lost is one life too many. So for me, I think anchorage on the Constitution is what we need. Vigilance in ensuring the Constitution is implemented is what we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, accountability to the Constitution must be what we pursue as a nation. And speaking to that, Honorable Mungatana, you're from Tana River, another PhD student, and listening to what Millie is saying, she's saying, if it has to work, there has to be accountability. Senate is an oversight organ. How would that organ go about oversighting counties to ensure that they are really drivers, practically so, of socio-economic rights and human rights?
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, I want to really say how happy I am being in Homa Bay today. I took a morning jog on your way to Siro. And the enthusiasm of the people, I was amazed at how beautiful this place is, the hills, the greenery, it's so nice. And I thought if our girls came here, they won't go back to Tana River. So you're welcome to come to Tana River. It's beautiful. And I saw there's a lot of religion. I saw people on the river there wearing white. I think they were doing baptism or something. and people who are doing overnight prayer meetings. So I think there's a lot of prayer. Maybe this is one reason why Gladys Wanga, governor, is succeeding so well. I think people have a lot of faith and enthusiasm. As I was running there, I just had Muzungu, Muzungu. I told them, no, mimi ni Mswahili. And they all laughed, I don't know. But it's beautiful. Thank you so much to be here. The weather is fantastic. Except that the sun, it comes late. I think it was rising a bit late from our side, and it goes down a bit later. I don't know. It gets time to get used to the place, but it's beautiful. Thank you, the people of Homa Bay, and I love my stay so far. Maybe to go back to what we are saying about accountability. May I just say, first of all, before I say about accountability, how, for me, my experience of democracy and human rights, from the time that we were in university, in the Law Society, and then, because we were in leadership in the Law Society at university, and then the Law Society of Kenya, and people like James, Paul Muite, were all ahead of us. They were our heroes. And it's a great pleasure that when I got elected first time, I sat in the same parliament with Paul Muite. Later on, we sat with James and other people who were in the fight for liberations. For I've seen it from the time when we were in university that you could not seat 5 people and discuss anything before some secret police people arrest you. It was so bad those days. You could not gather before you are told you are writing Mwakenyas and you are subject to, investigations. I remember things were very, very tight in those days. Even just holding a small demonstration. I was in leadership of the Law Society in Mombasa. And I remember we were just protesting against what we thought was the neglect by the second president then, Moi, because he was doing nothing, and there was a lot of problems in Tana River County. People were fighting, and the president those days, when he says something, it happens. And he was doing nothing. So we called Paul Muite to come and address us. We called Khelef Khalifa. We were in that human rights space. And just to demonstrate, just to walk, to show that we are disappointed, just to walk on the main streets to present a petition at the PC's place. We were being arrested, chased. Nowadays, things have changed. We have walked a long way from where we were. We have a new constitution. I was part of that making of the deal that brought the new constitution in Nakuru. Naivasha? And we got a new constitution. Now, when we got the new constitution, we got the governors. So let me speak as a senator, that the governors are very happy with senators when we are fighting for an increase of the funds that is called equitable share that comes to the governors. And this year, we got 405 billion that is coming down to the 47 counties. And this is an increase of 26.7 billion that is coming down to the 47 counties. Governors are always happy when we are fighting for an increment for the equitable share. But then when we are talking about accountability of these funds, accountability of the utilization of these funds, governors start spreading the rumors that we want to overthrow them. We are planning an impeachment motion. We are against them. This senator wants to come to my seat. Well, this is the problem we are having. What Millie is saying, that it is not yet independent. You know, when she was writing her book, that things are deteriorating with new officers. It is true, because the governors do not want to be told, here you are wrong, here you are misusing funds, here the funding that ought to be, because you see, as a senator, it's not my business, and it is not my part of my constitutional mandate to plan for how the budget will be utilized. I fight for the money to come. When the money comes to Tana River County, it is the responsibility of the governor to make sure that that money goes to health, that money goes to the roads that they are responsible for, basic education, it goes to the salaries and all that planning. But then after that, the Auditor General comes and makes a report. And that report is the one that we do oversight. We call it secondary oversight. The primary oversight is supposed to be with the MCAs. The secondary oversight is supposed to be with us. And we try to do the best we can. But every time you are doing real-time oversight, like you visit a hospital and you visit a market that is being constructed to show that maybe there's no value for money, the governors are up in arms. So, in terms of going forward, I really want to emphasize this, that our county governments, for them to sustain development, they must allow proper oversight. They must not look at the Senate as enemies. They must not look at members of county assemblies as enemies. These are the people who are telling you, look, we allocated this amount of money for sports. There's nothing happening. We allocated this amount of money for health. There's nothing happening. I mean, I've just come from a fight with my governor because in the 2024-2025 budget, we allocated 18.6% of the budget for health. That comes to something like 1.23 billion that goes to that. And then when you look at what our people are saying, there's nothing going on with the hospitals. Yesterday, Honorable Governor, His Excellency Kangata here, was demonstrating how in Murang'a County, he is able to tell, using digital technology, how many people have gone to hospital, even as he's sitting here, what diseases they are being examined for, how much, medicine has moved from the pharmacies across Murang'a County, where the vehicles are. This is where we should be going. And I really want to agree with Honorable Millie that we need to be honest, and transparency must be 100% in governance. And the only way is to use digital technology so that we are able to tell. Governors must stop thinking this money is theirs. They must think again that what this money came for is for the people. And they must also agree with us when we say Kangata is doing a good job, because we are able to see how many vehicles, he was here yesterday, how many vehicles are in the county, which one is parked at a bar. So even the drivers have behaved properly. Even the rate of accidents, county vehicles, has reduced because of transparency. So, in terms of sustaining the development, I think we need to have a reset in our minds. Senators are not here to fight you. Members of county assemblies are not fighting you. We are doing something called oversight, which is to simply ask the question, Your Excellency, the Governor, you allocated 650 million for water. There is no water project. Where is the money? So I think we need to have a reset in our minds. I really think that if oversight mechanisms are properly applied, then the counties will start being accountable for the monies that come to them, and these systems will sustain themselves. And let me say something about human rights at the county level. Most governors do not like human rights defenders. They don't like them because these people are the ones who go and tell them the truth. They are the ones who file petitions in county assembly to ask questions, you know, and they don't support them. So what can governors and the county assemblies do? We in the Senate, we receive the petitions that say, oh, our land has been taken, oh, this has been done, and we have done our bit. Even yesterday, We went here to Ndiwa, hapa kwa hii sukari industry, to go and look at our committee on lands, to look at issues on pollution after we finished here with the official opening. We are doing our bit, but the important bit, I think, is to support those human rights organizations. We should have a budget that says we are going to support CSOs that are talking about women rights in Tana River County, children rights in Tana River County, something like that. But governors across the country, they are not bothered with human rights people operating in this space. So for me, I am making an appeal that at the county level, we need to reset our minds. We need to say that we are all working together for the people. And then we need to be inclusive by helping the CSOs to come into government space by saying, supporting the civil society organizations to be able to say what they see so that we can improve. When you tell me your trouser is not ironed, it doesn't mean that you don't like me. Governor, I'm just telling you, iron your trouser next time. Isn't that so? If I tell you your shirt is creased, I'm not saying I don't like your shirt. I'm just saying iron your shirt the next time. So let us have a reset so that at the county levels, we include the civil society organization. We work with the members of the county assembly. We work with the senators. Many senators may not be running for governorship. And so we should not look at senators as people who are threatening you. No, we are simply doing our work. And I think that attitude, if it's accepted, we are going to have stronger counties. We are going to have better human rights records within the counties, and we are going to have stronger civil society organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think one of the conversations that is obtaining is the place of transparency, accountability, to be able to uphold constitutional rights. And now I want to turn to you, Khalid, as a prominent practitioner in human rights and civil society, in the civil society area. If you could very, very quickly tell us, the relationship you've had with counties, as Bwana Mungatana said, seems to be very adversarial. Is there any way we can be more intentional in working with county governments to be able to pursue these rights and to ensure that Kenyans can get socio-economic rights? Very, very quickly, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you to Council of Governors for giving civil society and human rights practitioners at the grassroots an opportunity to share our thoughts on this very important subject. It's true what Senator Mungatana has alluded to, that in many counties today, county governments perceive civil society as an enemy. And all we do is to play our role as civil society, as NGOs, as CBOs, as social justice centers. We have a responsibility to hold those in power accountable. And that responsibility has even become more pronounced, especially when traditional institutions that are meant to also support in holding leaders accountable are not doing that anymore. From the grassroots to the national level, we are seeing institutions eroding their public trust. And as civil society, we've continued, number one, not just to hold those accountable to book, but also those who are supposed to supervise to also do the same. So even as we speak, we know the responsibilities of the Senate. The Senate has a duty to ensure accountability, as the Senator has alluded to, the secondary responsibility. We hold the opposition also to account because they also have a duty. And when you're a party in opposition and then you decide to go to bed with the government of the day, you are diluting your responsibility as an opposition party. So we also have to hold those institutions accountable. And for me, I think when we adopted the new constitution in 2010, devolution was a promise that everyone had so much hopes in. Unfortunately, and as we make reference to the Auditor General's report, you will find that that promise has somehow turned into plunder. Every other day, every year, You hear of mismanagement of resources, ghost workers, unaccounted or unsupported expenditure. And this is something that as civil society, we are very, very worried about. And we feel that devolution can play a bigger and better role than what we are seeing currently. County governments have the primary mandate to deliver on Article 43 of the Constitution. You know, socio-economic rights. This new constitution made the right to healthcare. Gave us the healthcare as a right to food, right to clean water, and all these things. And these are supposed to be delivered primarily by the county governments. That's why for us, we are very much, zeroing down on county governments because the promise was with those county governments. And when we see in the streets, dilapidated infrastructure, we are not seeing the promises that were made, then we get extremely, extremely frustrated. And it's not just civil society, it's the population out there. Many people feel that, county governments are not delivering on their mandates. Every time you go to county governments, the services are never there. You find that county governments mainly divert resources either to governors' homes, to county executives. It becomes a pool or a party for a few to benefit from the county government resources. But the larger population remains unserviced or, not truly getting the fruits of devolution. So we feel that, time has come for us to consider restructuring the devolution structure that we have in this country. It is our firm belief that we over-devolved. 47 is, economically unsustainable, politically not viable, and it's about time we have used the experience, 15 years of experience, to review the devolution structure that we have so that we can then put into account our experiences to make sure that we are able to do that. And as I conclude, one very clear proposal that we are making is to reduce the number of devolved units. 47 is just too much. We need to reconsider that, either halving it at most, or maybe even having a minimum of 8. So that we can have more resources dedicated to service delivery, as opposed to paying 47 governors, paying 47 county assemblies, and all this, all those resources can be better channeled to provide services to the common mwananchi.
Great, thank you very much. I think one of the things you've highlighted is after 15 years, we need to come back and ask ourselves, how is it working? Now, I want to turn to another oversight agency, and this is NGEC, and ask, how would we translate this to national values? Because the ideal would be if good practice became norm and became a national value. You did a study not so long ago on national values and how counties are actually implementing that. Would you please speak to it very, very quickly?
Thank you, Jaki. Allow me to appreciate the panel. Unlike yesterday, it is a very inclusive panel. We have a 50-50 representation. As a commission, we were very concerned yesterday that out of all the speakers, we only had 2 female. That is, the first session had only Senator Muma, and I think the afternoon had only Governor Gladys Wanga. So I'd like to congratulate you today. Having said that, from National Gender and Equality Commission, of course, we are a constitutional commission established pursuant to Article 59(4) of the Constitution of Kenya. And our main mandate is to promote gender equality and to ensure freedom from discrimination. And therefore, we have worked closely with the county government because out of our 16 mandate, as you have rightly put it, one of it is to ensure that the principles of equality and inclusion is adhered to by both the national and the county government. For a decade, we conducted monitoring, and therefore we noted gaps and gains. And I would like to put my presentation into 3. I will start with the representation. In terms of representation, we have been having a progressive growth. especially in representation of female in county assemblies, where at least the basic minimum of 33.3% is met. However, there is no effort to increase the representation to 50. Therefore, we have an opportunity to do better. Also, in terms of representations of youth, progressively from 2017 to 2022, we have seen an increase of numbers of youth elected to county assemblies from 317 to 349 in 2022. Also, persons with disability, as Commission, we have noted that almost half the county assembly have representation of persons with disability in the assemblies. And I would like to appreciate the governor of Siaya is one of the counties with persons with disability in their assembly. Again, another indicator is protection of the vulnerables, especially women, from harmful cultural practices such as FGM, gender-based violence. Again, there is a progress. However, the gap is that we are seeing increase of femicide. Some counties are still practicing retrogressive practices such as FGM. Therefore, we have an opportunity to do better. Thirdly, we also audited in areas of access to services, especially public participation, which is a constitutional requirement. I think that is an avenue where we could do better as a counties. There is a report that it is more or less like a token or organized participation. Therefore, going forward, we would like to see a citizen having a lot of say and participation. What do we do as National Gender and Equality Commission to ensure that all these values of Article 10 is adhered to? We do a lot of collaboration with counties. We support the CECs and MCAs to train them on the values of Article 10. We support the county government to develop policies. I think over 35% of counties have policies, gender-based violence policies, PWD inclusion policies, and other policies that is relevant to inclusion. Likewise, we also train the clerks of the National Assemblies to be more sensitive, especially when it comes to issues of budgeting, to ensure that the special interest group is protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What we are hearing is it's happening, but it could do better. One of the areas of inclusion you have highlighted is gender. But one of the most excluded is actually young women. Now, I have with me Ms. Bolo, who is the chairperson of Young Women Leaders Connect. What does it look like for young people? And what would you speak to the leaders on this panel on how best to include young people, especially young women?
Thank you so much for that. I think I'd like to start from the point on transparency and accountability that I think Senator Mbongatana spoke to. And it amazes me that every time there is a governor who has just come in, when you're in their meeting, the first thing you'll hear them say is, you know, when we came in, we didn't find structures. We are still putting up structures. And so very recently, after the 2022 election, our pain point was we cannot even ask for certain accountability because the response is then going to be, we have just finished putting up structures, so now is when we want to start working, 1, 2, 3 years down the line. And so what that does is, as young women specifically, when we want to put the governments to task, and even county assembly to task on certain things and certain issues, you can't get a response because they already have a defense mechanism of how they are going to respond to you. They also still don't have certain policies. It would come as a shock to many that up to now, we still have county assemblies that don't have a sexual harassment policy. It's only until recently that a number of them were still doing it. So as a young woman, when you're going to a member of county assembly, for example, to try and engage them on the issues on sexual harassment within your ward or within your area, how do you begin when they themselves don't even have a document that they can use in protecting you, a document that they can use when they are going into the county assembly? How do you begin that conversation? And so I think for young women, it starts from the point of dialogue. We do not have we don't have enough systems for dialogue. We don't have enough systems to even try and question the various legislators that are there. A lot of counties right now don't have working websites. Very recently, we were having a dialogue forum in one of the counties, and a young woman stood up and asked, why is it that we don't have a sexual harassment policy? And the member of county assembly in the county said, no, we have it. Go to the website and check. We actually have a lot of progressive gender bills that we are doing. You will find them on the website. But to their surprise, the website was not working. And so how do you follow up on the mechanism you have been sent to go and check on and contribute towards? I think the other issue is public participation is not, it is being done just to look like it has happened. So to talk about the structure of it, if I'm a young woman and I'm a lactating mother, it's going to be very difficult for me to get there because the environment is not suitable for young people, for young mothers. So you find that they don't have an area where they can say lactating mothers are free to sit here, or we are able to get minders for the young children. So what I'll do is I'll stay home. I will not go for that session. Then if you're maybe working, because look at most of the public participation forums are done during weekdays. So if I am working, then I'm not able to attend the public participation forum. I have to choose between making my bread or going to participate in decision making. So if we are able to incorporate civic participation, we have apps like Civic Voices that are able to tell people, these are the public participation forums that are happening, this is where it's happening, should you want to give your views, this is how you can give your views. That way, even if I'm not able to be there physically, I am able to at least follow up and see this is what people discuss and this is what has happened. And this is the areas that we can do better. I think another area is the relationship between senators and governors. A lot of times, if the senator and the governor are from the same party or from the same coalition, then very rarely will you hear oversight discussions. But if they are from different camps, then the excuse, especially from the executive, then becomes, I wanted to do A, B, C, and D, but the politics from the senator has stopped me. So again, that makes it also very difficult to question some of their gains and some of their losses, because then the issue becomes very political and moves away from what the tangible issue is. I think lastly is also to talk about the voices of young women. So when you go to, there are certain forums that we know are designated for the wazes, let me say, the traditional elders. We know women have the chamas, the jumuiya, but as a young woman, when you want to go to the chama, most of the time the women will tell you, you have your own duties as young women. Go and get your own caucuses as young women. And when you go to the areas where the youth are supposed to be socializing, then the young men will not expect you to be there because that is their space. They want to dominate. So you find that young women fall through the cracks because then they don't exactly have a particular area where they can belong, where they can, voice out what some of their issues are.
Thank you very much. I think hearing that you've talked about policy, but you've also talked about many false starts, especially in inclusion of younger person. I want to turn to you, Council Okello. You have had very good practice in terms of reform, especially at the judiciary level. Are there lessons you can share very, very quickly in a minute or so that you could share that counties can borrow in terms of how to meaningfully achieve these rights for citizens? Very quickly, sir.
Thank you very much. You'll just give me a minute before I talk about the law and the judiciary. to talk about economics in a minute, because we are talking about socio-economic rights, which is a very developmental term. My view, am I audible? Yes. Yeah. My view is that we'll only realize socio-economic rights if we satisfy two considerations. One, we must get the conceptual and philosophical basis of rights correctly. These are not gifts. They are at the center of human dignity. And that requires a major mental shift to embrace the very citizen-centric constitution that we have and not a state-centric constitution that we had before. So there needs to be a mental shift among duty bearers on the question of right within the context of Kenya in 2025. Then the second consideration is we must get the empirical and the strategic and the financial right. That's a second precondition. And what do I mean? Socioeconomic rights plays out on the fourth schedule, which is what Khalid was talking about. Devolved units are a major agent of realizing socioeconomic rights. And a lot of jurisprudence around the Bill of Rights has also emerged through contestations around devolution. Now, if we do not complete the transfer of functions to devolved governments, that process is incomplete, it's inchoate. And the best illustration is in health and agriculture. And I'll just give you two figures and one anecdote. So if we do not complete that transfer, and we also do not sufficiently support county government financially, then we are likely to face constant trouble with respect to socioeconomic rights. But also, if we do not have corresponding accountability that is robust, then it doesn't matter how much money you give to counties. The reason why I'm saying this is if you look at health, or if you look at overall allocation of sharing revenue, it has been declining. The national budget is increasing, the equitable share of revenue is declining. It was at 17.3% in 2022, it was at 15% in 23, 14% in 24, and 14.3% in 25. So the decline of the equitable share of revenue runs opposite to the increase in the total budget from 2.1 trillion in 2022 to 2.8 trillion. That's number one. Number two, and this is where the bigger story is. So first of all, we are below the constitutional threshold. But number two, if you look at the allocation to health and agriculture, which are effectively devolved functions, if you look at the fourth schedule, and those are the socioeconomic rights arena, that is where the real story is, and we should be worried about it. If you look at that data, since 2013, I did the math here, since 2013, the total amount of money that has gone to agriculture is 851 billion. Counties have received 194 billion. National government, 657. So counties, agriculture is devolved, but they have received 23% of agriculture allocation. Health is 50-50, yet health is also largely devolved. That tells you that the incomplete nature of the transfer of functions to county government will continue to undermine the ability to realize socioeconomic rights. That's the first thing I wanted to say. Then on the judiciary transformation that you talked about, yes, this is a key institution realization of rights. In 2011, when we came in, we had 16 high court stations in the whole country. Today, there are about 45 high court stations. We had 53 judges throughout the country. Today, we have 190 judges throughout the country. In this county, you had to go to Kisii to access a high court judge from For those who know this county, from Nyakach to Isibania, there was only one judge in Kisii. That has changed. We have judges here, we have judges in Migori, and so on and so forth. So we increased the number of judicial officers to just improve the access to justice. There are many other things that are going on which may help with inclusion and socioeconomic rights. One, if I may say very quickly, the Small Claims Court. It was set up almost 3 years ago. As of now, it has had 294,000 cases, which says that there was suppressed demand for justice. And for me, that is a frontier for work. Number two, we have the alternative justice system mechanisms that the judiciary is rolling out, which is a very good alternative framework for resolving disputes quickly and in a cheaper manner. So very quickly, those are just two things that are happening in the judiciary that I think are key in helping realize socioeconomic rights at a very basic community level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, time is not on our side, so we need to be closing the panel. But I think hearing all that, I just wanted very, 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 very quickly to ask Governor Orengo, what new practice would counties then adopt that would help in realization of these rights? Very quickly, sir.
I think, first of all, let me make a general comment about some of the things that have come up because they have been directed to counties. There should be no apology about accountability. That is a requirement of the Constitution. And Mr. Khalid, my friend, whenever you are oversighting counties, either as a government institution or a civil organization, that is provided in the Constitution. And you should not whine about it. And I want to remind Governor Mungatana that you have the tools. If I'm summoned by the Senate and I do not appear in the Senate has tools to punish any infractions to legitimate processes that are being conducted by the Senate, either as an oversight body or as a legislative body. But overall, I want to say devolution is the way forward. Whether you live in the West, the East, or South, or North, you would find that the most productive, successful countries are those who are devolved. Whether they are big or small, they could be as small as Switzerland, or as big as China, or as big as the United States of America. And what Mr. Okello has said, I think it's where the problem that we have in this country, that whereas we glorify devolution, but what we do really means that we are still not committed to it. If you take a country like the United States of America, if you take those states separately, California, New York, Illinois, they are an integral part of a bigger economy, but even on their own, they contribute greatly to the national economy and even to the world economy. So we should not have any doubts that the future is really with devolution. And in Kenya, the problem is that this national government is still not quite in tandem with the promises of this constitution that in order to bring power to the people, in order to take resources to the people, if you look at Chapter 11, you look at Article 174, it is the mechanism that the Constitution has established for taking power to the people and to take the resources to the people. And the tragedy is today, particularly on social and economic rights, as Mrs. Kello has pointed out, the resources that should be going to the counties are mostly still with the national government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me clap for the panelists who've done a very good job in a very tight time. What I've heard them say is accountability is non-negotiable. It is good practice, it's good manners. We must be accountable. We've also agreed that the Constitution is the foundation and we must mature it, we must respect it. They've said oversight is important and the oversight organs and tools need to be applied. But we've also said for this to happen and sustainability of development, we must be innovative and inclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, my sincere apologies. This would have been the best conversation if it lasted 5 hours because we needed to ask more questions, but we all overslept because this is Homa Bay, the home of fish. We had a little too much to eat and didn't make it too early. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You can still ask the panelists when they come back the questions you may be holding. Thank you.
All right, so let's appreciate them once more. That is a great thought-provoking conversation there by Ms. Jaki Mbogo. She is the moderator as well as Chief of Party UKAID REINVENT program. We've also had His Excellency Governor James Orengo, Governor Siaya County, Honorable Millie Grace Odhiambo, Member of Parliament for Suba North Constituency, Senator Honorable Danson Mungatana, Senator for Tana River County, Honorable Rehema Jaldesa, Chairperson, National Gender and Equality Commission, Mr. Hussein Hali, the CEO of Vocal Africa, as well as Counsel Duncan Okolo, Associate Director of the Kenya Judiciary Academy, and Ms. Ruth Bolo Okul, the Chairperson of the Young Women Leaders Connect. And as we always do, let's have them take a group photo for this second plenum. In the interest of time, we now move on to our side events happening in the designated breakout areas. Please check your program to see which sessions you'd like to attend. Here in the main hall, we have a session by the Digital Health Authority on the role of digitization in healthcare in promoting social equity, justice, and inclusion. If you want to be in that side event, do stay in the main hall. But a very important, something important to note, that we will convene right here in the main hall at exactly 12:30 p.m. for a high-level session with our guest speaker, retired Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. It is a high-level session you do not want to miss, so please be back here and seated by 12:30 p.m. Good afternoon. For the delegates and the dignitaries that will be accompanying former retired Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Thank you.